Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, that weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. Our topics tonight: clarifying McCaskill, Kemper Arena backers fight City Hall, and a big fight looming over immigration. Plus, roast and toast. But we start with our headliner segment, focusing on the controversy over Lyft, a ride-sharing service that came to Kansas City this past May. Lyft connects drivers and riders through a smartphone app. City officials argue Lyft drivers should be bound by regulations covering taxi companies. Lyft thinks those regulations need to change. The two sides are working now to resolve their differences. Kelvin Simmons is with the Denton's Law Firm, the firm that represents Lyft in the proceedings. Simmons is a former Kansas City, Missouri councilman and Missouri Commissioner of Administration. Mr. Simmons, welcome to the Ruckus program.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure being here.
So Lyft is not available on the streets right now. If you take your smartphone app and try to get a driver, you can't do it.
Well, not today, but we are hoping that we will be up soon, and we are in negotiations with the city of Kansas City to bring Lyft back to Kansas City because we believe that it is a unique opportunity to have a diverse transportation network in Kansas City that allows citizens in Kansas City to have something that is very special, and that is a ride-sharing network application that provides rides to citizens all over the city of Kansas City.
What's the main point of contention right now between Lyft and the city government of Kansas City?
Well, I think that what the city is trying to do is take a step backwards to look at ride-sharing transportation networks because it works vastly different than what you know as a taxi cab regulation or livery regulation. We say that we're a little different than those two regulatory frameworks. We believe that there are 200 cities all across the United States. We're operating in 60 cities right now through ride-sharing transportation networks that operate differently. We think cities across the United States are starting to look at it, and they're getting it right. They're looking at their regulatory frameworks, and in doing so, we think the city of Kansas City was wise to step back and say, let's open up our taxi cab regulations right now. Let's look at the ordinances that we have, and maybe it's time to look at a transportation network that's different than just taxi cab.
But you agree there should be some sort of regulations concerning
Absolutely.
Lyft. Drivers should be screened and should be made certain that they're
Absolutely.
responsible people.
We do recognize that the city of Kansas City has a job to do from a regulatory standpoint. They must ensure the safety of the drivers, of the passengers, and we have no problems with that whatsoever. We often would say that there's ways that we could do that makes it more simpler for the city of Kansas City and operate within a regulatory framework that's very good for the city. And I think the city, with its resolution that they just passed here to look at this particular issue, is really taking the right steps to ensure that. Let me give you an example. Just right now, as we tape today, you've got city council persons that are in Austin, Texas at National League of Cities. When they go there, they can basically turn on their app, and some of them have the app, Lyft, and other companies, and they can get the ride share and they can get a ride throughout Austin because the city council there passed a ordinance and has a transportation network that allows this. And I think when those guys come back home, they can do the same thing for their citizens.
Can Lyft go anywhere a taxi cab can go in Kansas City?
Pretty much, yes. And actually what we'd like to do is see our drivers be able to take people around the city of Kansas City in the furthest northern part of the city and the furthest southern part of the city, where you don't have to wait a long time for a taxi cab to get there, because there are going to be neighborhood drivers that can basically be right there on the spot, and in 2 or 3 minutes after they basically hit the Lyft app, there's somebody there to pick them up.
When you say city, you mean the metropolitan area beyond the city limits of Kansas City?
It can be, but you know, when you think about the over 300 square miles of the city of Kansas City, it's so large that over a long period of time, I think we've had to look at how do we bring rides to people that need to get to places. And our particular opportunity with Lyft gives more diversity in terms of transportation needs for the citizens of Kansas City.
What do you see as the essential difference between Lyft and, say, a traditional cab company, a taxi company?
Well, one of the things that you recognize with a Lyft application is that when you have the application on your smartphone and you request a driver to come pick you up, you're going to know who that person is because there'll be a picture on the phone. They're going to know who you are because you'll have a picture of yourself on that phone. And no money exchanges hands whatsoever. It's all done through the application. It's done from the Lyft perspective.
So the bill is paid before you get in the vehicle?
Well, actually what happens is when you get ready to exit the vehicle, we're going to say, here's what we think the donation would be, and it basically pops up on your smartphone. You can hit a button that says, okay, I agree to do that. I agree to tip the cab driver, or in this particular situation, I might not do anything. We're asking for the donation, so there's no cash that changes hands, and that's revolutionary.
And if somebody doesn't want to donate?
Well, you know, at some point in time, we'll take that as a loss, but you're not going to do that too many times because we got to make money too.
When will Lyft be back on the streets approximately?
Well, we believe that when the city concludes its resolution and they look towards an ordinance for ride-sharing transportation network, that inherent within that ordinance, it will allow us to come back to the city of Kansas City where we've got jobs to offer.
Give us a date.
I don't know. That's kind of up to the city.
January?
We're hoping by 2015 we're up and running in the city of Kansas City again.
All right, thanks very much for your time. Kelvin Simmons joining us to talk about Lyft. Now let's meet the panelists and see if we can start a ruckus. Steve Rose is a Johnson County civic leader and a columnist with the Kansas City Star. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Urban League in Kansas City. Steve Glorioso is a prominent political consultant, and Woody Cozad is president of the Cozad Company, a government relations firm. One doesn't have to be clairvoyant to sense that Missouri U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill might run for governor in 2016. One clue, the Democrats' presumptive gubernatorial nominee in Missouri, at least at this point, Attorney General Chris Koster, is thought to be losing support because of controversy involving campaign contributions. McCaskill ran for Missouri governor in 2004, losing to Matt Blunt. Panelist Steve Glorioso, a longtime friend and advisor, says McCaskill may come under increasing pressure to run because, and we quote, Democrats won't be eager to see Missouri become a completely right-wing state. So, Steve, from your privileged perspective, what is the inside story on Claire McCaskill?
Well, you probably won't get the inside story, but I can say that she was already getting some pressure after the events of Ferguson, Missouri. A lot of people, well, of course, Nixon made a fool out of himself, but Koster really didn't rise to the occasion. But after the story in the New York Times, which then local Missouri papers and media outlets picked up, Claire started to get increasing amount of pressure from people to get in the race and run. She would be able to run without giving up her Senate seat if she was so inclined. Koster, I can't imagine he would stay in the race. I don't see the two of them ever running against each other. So I think right now I would.
Well,
yes.
You mean Koster is going to get out of the race if McCaskill were to get in?
I think there would be what we call in one line of business an accommodation. Make him an offer he can't refuse or something. But the
naturally, you're quoting The Godfather. That's great.
Yes, of course.
It's his idea of a business.
That's right. But I think that's what would happen. I think right now Koster is still viable unless he takes on a lot more baggage. I think he's probably still viable, but and he's a very skilled politician. We'll see if that will happen. But if it doesn't, then Claire will be under more and more scrutiny and pressure to get in the race.
There's another Democrat among us. What do you think, Gwen?
Well, I think Claire should get in the race. I think she could win, have a strong possibility of winning the race. I think that Koster, while he is I agree he's a great campaigner, a great politician, but I think that the damage in this past with the New York Times article is pretty darn severe. His efforts to roll out we're not going to take contributions, I think, is going to fall kind of weak. But the thing about Claire is this. Yes, I think that she would be strong in the executive office of the state, and I would also like to see a Claire McCaskill, Catherine Hanaway race for the governor and give this state an opportunity to elect its first female governor to hold that office. Claire is strong-minded, and so is Catherine Hanaway. So I think that would be an interesting.
Well, let's talk about Catherine
campaign to watch.
Hanaway. She's the former Speaker of the Missouri House, first woman to serve in that capacity. She's a Republican, and Woody, apparently a favorite of Rex Singfield.
Yes, and so far, of course, it's hard to raise money until the 14 races are over. There are two candidates who are clearly running for governor on the Republican side, and Catherine Hanaway, the former Speaker, is one. The auditor, Tom Schweik, is the other. You can't tell it from looking at his contribution list, but the fact is he, too, is being, at this point, financially held aloft by one person, and that's Sam Fox over in St. Louis. Sam's raising all his money. So it's a common problem for the two of them. But now that the 14 races are over, that'll change pretty quickly, and their base of financial giving is going to broaden on it for both of them. Hanaway is probably, if you ask me to bet right now, I say Hanaway is the probable nominee. She's also, in my estimation, the one more likely to win a general election, no matter who the Democratic candidate is. Back to Claire McCaskill for a moment. The offer she will make to Koster is, if I'm governor, you're my replacement in the U.S. Senate, because I get to pick. And but I don't think that offer or any discussion like that is going to go on unless and until Koster gets chewed up a lot more than he has been so far in this scandal.
Steve, you watched Claire McCaskill over the years from your perspective in Johnson County. What do you think about Claire, and do you think she might be an effective Missouri governor?
Well, yes, I think she would be very effective. I was in an event with Charlie Cook of the Cook Political Report, and he was kind of on the record, off the record. I can't really tell which, but I'll just say that he knows, Steve knows probably more about this than he does. But his take on it was that Claire McCaskill was, in fact, going to be the nominee for governor in the state of Missouri. And he hearkened back to the time, this is fairly recent, where senators want to become governors. Pete Wilson in California was one of the first to take that leap and go what some people thought was a backward step. Now it's no longer looked that way, and in fact it's a stepping stone possibly to much higher national office. So I think she's in play.
And one final note, Steve, I read that McCaskill's writing a book to be released next year.
It's going to be a doozy. She told me the other day it'll probably be out in July of next year. I had no role in it except to be interviewed by the person that co-authored it, and she was telling me she's really laying it all out there, and I think it'll be. It has nothing to do with a run for governor. It's just something she wanted to do. And she's had quite a career, and she's got some great stories.
All right. Well, maybe you can fight City Hall. A week ago, when we talked about the future of Kemper Arena, it appeared that the influential members of the American Royal Association would prevail. Kemper would be torn down, and the city would help finance a newer and smaller facility for the Royal. But things changed at last week's council meeting. Some council members joined with part of the audience and historic Kansas City in asking for more options for the Kansas City landmark. And Gwen, how will the council try to find those options?
Well, they announced that they were going to put out a request for proposals to try and surface some new options, new alternatives, and hopefully some developers will come up with a strategy that can offer a more viable solution to this problem. I think, and I was delighted to see them put the brakes on with this. I mean, the American Royal, they're asking for $20 million. Well, they asked for 30, and the city's considering $20 million to help with the demolition and construction of a new, smaller facility, with another $1 million per year for towards maintenance. And I think that the city should do its due diligence to try and minimize the impact on taxpayers with this program. And I think the overwhelming support that they got at that meeting last week says pretty much that might be the overriding sentiment of the taxpayers.
Well,
of
Steve, it
Kansas
seems there have
City.
been two plans. One is tear it down, and the other is to repurpose it and put a sports facility next door and keep Kemper in existence. Does that suggest to you there are not many other options that people are interested in?
I think there are none other options. I think that it's already a done deal. I think that Kemper is coming down, and the American Royal is going to get exactly what they want. And I think that the strength of the people behind that effort, and if you look back in the history of this city, when those people get behind an effort like that, it's pretty much a done deal, and I think that's where it's going to go.
Well, one of those people is UMB Chairman Mariner Kemper, the chairman of the American Royal Association. He sent a column to the Kansas City Star that was published a few days ago where he makes the case and defends himself, and he says in part, over the past few months there has been much controversy over the issue of Kemper Arena. I've been called arrogant, selfish, and a bully, and those are the printable ones. My intention has not been to arbitrarily tear down a building that bears my family's name, but because the building has not been kept up, it is currently collecting dust rather than playing host to concerts, conventions, and horse shows. Makes a pretty good point, doesn't he, Woody?
Yes, he does. And I was there for a horse show last week, and I had to take out my own handkerchief and dust off the seat, and it was black when I was through doing it. They don't take care of it. They don't care about it. Look, this is typical Kansas City. We are all caught in the dust of a local controversy while an opportunity walks out our door. We want to be the animal health corridor, the center of the world in animal health in this huge industry. You need a show. You need to say to the world you're the center of it. The American Royal rodeo, horse show, livestock show, barbecue, and if you add what you should have had long ago, a dog and cat show. And at the center of that,
And a dog and pony show.
those are huge things. Let me tell you. And at the center of it, you put a week that everybody in this industry blocks out their calendar because they have to be in Kansas City that week. It's Animal Health Week in the epicenter of that industry in the world. That's what you do if you're the automobile industry in Detroit or the gizmo industry in Vegas. And then you have a way to decide which one of these two helps you with that objective. If you have no objective, you don't know how to make a decision.
Steve Glorioso, Mr. Kemper says his goal is to reestablish Kansas City as an agricultural hub and further develop the West Bottoms. The West Bottoms certainly needs redevelopment, does it not?
No.
It does not?
I mean, it's coming along quite well. This is one of these issues that's like bore me to tears. Tear the thing down. I mean, it's figuratively and literally a white elephant. It has no real use. Tear it down, then go out for bid. Get rid of this idea. If people think that's some sort of marvelous historic one, my dad's got a '98 Mercury. I'd be glad to sell to people. I mean, tear it down. It has no use. I wouldn't do anything with it at the moment. Just get rid of the expense, right? They pay off the bonds next year, and just tear it down. I mean, they tore down Yankee Stadium. We can tear down Kemper Arena.
Do you want to tear it down, Gwen?
Yeah, honestly, I really don't care, and I kind of share with Steve. It's a story I wish would go away, but I think that the city still. I want to get back to the point that it needs to be about what is in the best interest of the city overall, and the best use of taxpayer dollars, and not just the will of the Kempers.
Yeah, one quick thing. It was really, I'm sure it was not lost on everyone. The guy, the architect that built it, did this thing,
the thing in this
Let's not forget, in 1979, his arena was so poorly built.
Right.
On a sunny day, and thank the Lord there was not an event, the roof collapsed. I mean, it's not even a well-built building, evidently.
That's why it's historic.
Well,
I feel that way about myself.
All right. You want to start a ruckus? Bring up immigration. And President Obama has done just that. He has made it clear he plans to use his executive authority to give documentation to as many as 5 million people who came to this country illegally. Republicans say they will fight Obama tooth and nail on this, perhaps by cutting or canceling funds for some programs. The Republican argument is that Obama has no authority to implement such sweeping changes. In 2011, President Obama seemed to agree.
And sometimes when I talk to immigration advocates, they wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works. What we really need to do is to keep up the fight to pass genuine, comprehensive reform.
Now the president argues that Republicans have failed to act, leaving him no choice. So how do you see this latest immigration battle being resolved, or do you think it will be? Steve Rose.
First of all, that was only the first of many comments that the president had made. He said at one point that he would need to be king in order to pull something like this off, so I guess he thinks now that he is. This is going to be a lot of huff and puff from the Republicans. They can do little things like defund the Social Security cards, and I've read that they may do something like that to keep the people who are getting Social Security from actually getting the cards. And they can do
immigrants, are you talking about, or everybody? You're talking about immigrants.
The immigrants, of course. And you know, the courts ultimately will decide this matter. And I don't think, given the precedent of George Henry Walker Bush, who allowed 1.5 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, to gain citizenship, and that precedent is already there on the books, and that was ratified by Congress 3 months later, that given those precedents and given the law as it is, I think the courts are going to let it go, and I think the Republicans, after they huff and they puff, are going to let it go, and this is going to stand.
Even when they take control of both houses in January?
Even if they take control of both houses by wide margins, which they have, they still, I do not believe, will be able to stop this effort.
The Republicans need to tread carefully on how they respond to this. They do not want to alienate the Latino electorate going into the 2016 presidential election. So I think they will talk aloud, but then they will act softly.
Well, what do you think the president's motive is? Just to help people? Or is there a political motivation for this?
Well, I think
poke in the eye of the Republican Party.
The bottom line is Congress had an opportunity to address immigration reform, and they didn't. When the president made those statements, I think what he was trying to do back then was encourage the Congress to take action. The Senate passed a bill, and Boehner sat on it, took no action. So the president needs to do this.
What do you think the GOP should do in response to this action by Obama?
Well, the first thing they should do is stand up for the Constitution. And you don't become king because Congress fails to pass the bill you want them to pass. Look, our Constitution is largely based on the glorious revolution of 1688 in England, when James II was run out for doing exactly this. He took the pardoning power, which is clearly a power that the king had. Nobody disputed it under the Constitution. And instead of pardoning one person or a handful of people, he pardoned everybody who violated certain laws that he didn't like. He effectively thereby repealed a law passed by Parliament by using a power he did have in some scale. That is what is going on now. That's the reason our Constitution has 3 branches of government and not just one, because we learned a lesson from that. And we need to stand up for that principle, and we should do so. The Latino electorate outside of 3 states, California, New Jersey, and New York, the Republicans do pretty decently with. We just got almost half their votes in Texas. And we've been fighting this fight that whole time.
That was in the off year, in the presidential election, it won't be the same.
Steve, how do you think this is going to play out?
Oh, I think, the president is making the announcement, as we know. And I think the Republicans will huff and puff, and I'm not sure they'll do a whole lot. You know, I got to laugh at this idea of mandates, this Boehner and McConnell, Cruz, all of them running around. We got a mandate. Well, Barack Obama has a far bigger mandate than need. He was elected with more than 50% of the vote twice. He made immigration reform a major part of both of his elections. And the day he was sworn in, the Republicans were holed up in the hovel in the Capitol saying, we're going to oppose everything he did. So I'd say, I can't do it on the air, but I'd take one of my fingers and say, all right.
And on that note, we have to move ahead and hurry through this. It's time for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes offer a pat on the back or a kick in the pants to people or events in the news. And we start tonight with Gwen.
I have a roast for Councilman Michael Brooks and a toast for the young woman who stepped up to report his allegations of abuse or violence in the workplace. But more importantly, it really is time for Councilman Brooks to step aside, let the investigation take place, and give us an opportunity to have someone represent the 5th District who will hold that office in the high esteem that it should be held in representing those of us who expect our public servants to step up and exercise strong leadership, strong character, strong moral values.
I'd like to toast Uber and Lyft and the other rideshare networks for trying to do a favor for the city that the city can't seem to figure out. If we want to have light rail and commuter rail in the metro area, and that's questionable in mine, but they want it. Okay, if you want it, it must connect to motor vehicles at some point that are easily accessible, that is, to taxis. The reason all these systems work in New York is you hop off them and get right into a taxi. You can't do that in Kansas City right now. And until you deregulate considerably the taxi industry, let Uber and Lyft operate, you're going to go down to Union Station on your light rail or your commuter rail, and you're going to get out and stand there in the rain or the snow or the heat with no way to get to where you need to go.
I'd like to toast someone few people have heard of, Dwayne Goosen, who was the budget director for 12 years under several, both Democratic and Republican governors in the state of Kansas. He will tell you the truth about what's happening in Kansas, and he will lay it out for you in specific detail. And if you are interested, go to his blog at kansasbudget.com and read for yourself what he has to say.
I'd like to toast and roast the Roman Catholic Church. First, the toast to the new Pope, Pope Francis, and then the roast to Bishop Finn. Do you have no shame, Bishop? Do you have no sense of decency? You're the only bishop in the history of the country to be indicted and then plead guilty for your role in the abuse of young people by Catholic priests. They're going to remove him, but why don't you just quit first?
And that is Ruckus for this week, and for a while. We're away until December the 18th. In the meantime, pledge weeks and special programming at KCPT. Thanks for joining us tonight. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the 18th.